if you're preparing for a super flex league, this is obviously one where you probably are going to want to start 2 quarterbacks. So how does that change your strategy?
The Superflex top 200 is vastly different than what you see in a traditional PPR league because it's loaded with quarterbacks. In fact, my first 6 players overall, all quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And then you could go into 8 of the top 12 are quarterbacks. I had that dynasty league where Anthony Richardson was my one, and then I waited a little bit. I'm not opposed to taking one quarterback and then going after wide receivers or running backs while everyone else is getting quarterbacks. But you have to really watch the flow of the draft because you don't want to end up with, say, for example, I don't want Derek Carr to be my QB2 in a super flex league. There are some leagues where, and this is typically what I'll do is my first 3 picks, 2 of them are going to be quarterbacks. Like I have one league, my 2 quarterbacks are Anthony Richardson and Jaden Daniels. Oh, by the way, that's Scott Fish. And I am super excited about the potential of having those 2 studs. And I think Daniels is going to be a stud starting just about every single week of the regular season. I just did a draft. I got Mahomes and Dak. I mean, giddy up, baby. That's exciting. And that can really help you contend for a championship. And remember, too, because quarterbacks are going to go higher and higher and higher, that's going to drop more running backs who are very good into the later portion of the draft and to a degree wide receivers.
Oh, I would say more so wide receiver. And I'm talking about the top guys. Like you're going to find yourself being able to draft wide receivers that you traditionally would have been looking at in the first 3 rounds. You're going to be able to grab them in rounds like 4 or 5. Like those guys are going to be available there. Again, I think the point that you made is watch the flow of the draft. And that's always good advice for every draft. But in this case, you're going to be surprised at the wide receivers that are going to fall down the board. In my opinion, some people are still going to get some of those high end. They're going to want to grab those running backs because there are just fewer of them. And so as everything gets pushed down the board, I think people probably still grab those running backs, but I think the wide receivers do get pushed down the board in these super flex drafts. And I agree with you. I think 2 quarterbacks in the first 3 picks is probably a good goal, but I think what you said about Derek Carr is the perfect point to make in that don't just draft the next quarterback up over a different position group just to have that second quarterback. If you're not excited about plugging that guy in as your super flex, or you think there's a potential that the wide receiver or running back that you're drafting in that round would actually, maybe be able to outscore that quarterback, then I don't necessarily think that you need to do that. I'm not saying like if a high value wide receiver is on the board with a lower value quarterback, take the higher. But I'm saying if you get into a tier of quarterback where this guy is not going to consistently put up high points and you think you might be able to find a wide receiver later that you could plug in there or running back that you could plug in there later, then I wouldn't waste my time. And I know that that's going to put you kind of behind the 8 ball at quarterback, but wait and just grab another, like even a Bo Nix, much later, like, because then maybe he'll score the same amount as a Derek Carr or more, maybe there's upside attached to it and you're getting him in a later round. Anything else for Superflex?
If there's so many quarterbacks that coming off the board, like the round 2, round 3, and you're like, boy, I don't really value anybody even in a Superflex league at this point.
Right.
You can wait a little bit. Like, don't get crazy, but you can wait a little bit. Maybe wait a few rounds. And, potentially, because now I don't know if Caleb Williams will be available in round 4, 5, or 6. He's probably going to be long gone at that point. But like Kirk Cousins might be out there. Certainly Tua Tagovailoa could be out there. And those are not bad options to have as QB2s in Superflex leagues. And those guys are not going to cost you 2nd or 3rd round picks.